as it's referred to it both. So with that, we'll kind of get underway here. It's been something that's becoming more and more we're hearing more about over the years. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was virtually unheard of. But now it's pretty popular. Just a way, an overview, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the issue, the demand and value associated with shed antlers, the impacts shed antler collecting or hunting has, the status here in Nevada, what's occurring in Nevada, what's our legal status, and potential solutions. The demand, there's a kind of a wide range of demand from personal use. People collect them just for personal use. They'll collect them to make knife antlers, or knife handles, excuse me, interior decorating, chandeliers, furniture, cabinet knobs, etc. And they also have a trophy value associated with them. This right out of the internet, chandelier for, almost $8,500. So there's little value associated with these antlers. Again, off the internet, a match set of antlers scores 279. Nothing humongous or big, $450. You get into the bigger ones and, approaching 400, and you're talking some big dollars. People ask, is there really a demand? Picture's worth 1,000 words. This is just one example of one warehouse from one collector, or buyer, I should say. The value, deer range from $5 to $20 a pound. A match set can be $5,000 plus. Elk, if it's sold by the pound, is $6 to $16 per pound. That's not good. Okay. An article out of Outdoor Life. This stuff's no secret. Got sheds to sell. Searching for sheds. Quote right out of this article: an avid shed hunter can make $15,000 a year. The value range of trophy qualities from $1,500 to $19,000. So money's a big motivator in this for some people. The impacts the shed hunting has, shed collecting, it's excessive harassment of animals on the winter range. There's been, we've documented people actually chasing animals in an effort to cause them to drop their antlers, run them through the trees, and they'll snag an antler on the tree running through it and drop it. Then they can run and pick up the antler. There's unintended consequences from this. There's a lot of people out there that collect the sheds recreationally. They have absolutely no intent of harming wildlife or impacting wildlife in any negative fashion. But while they're out there, often they're inadvertently causing wildlife in a feeding area to move to a less desirable forage area. And they just don't realize it. Or they may preclude wildlife from an area altogether because of all the human activity in there. It forces wildlife to deplete energy reserves when energy reserves are low in the end of winter. After going through a tough winter, the energy reserves are depleted, and moving them around, whether intentionally or unintentionally, does have an impact. Off-road travel, habitat destruction, that's occurring. There's individuals out there that on ATVs that grid areas just for the purposes of collecting sheds. They're not sticking to the roads, they're just going cross-country. And there's even individuals out there that'll use these power parachutes, what have you, to fly for sheds, fly over them, see them on the ground, mark it on the GPS, and then go back, collect them later. Okay, here in Nevada, it's kind of White Pine and Lincoln County sportsmen expressed a concern about impacts of shed antler hunting, and since then there's been other sportsmen as well and other groups that have expressed concern. But when these two counties came forward, members of the county advisory boards and sportsmen, we worked together with them to kind of explore some options. So what we decided we'd do was conduct just a special operation, see what's going on out there. During the spring of 2008, we conducted 4 extended patrol operations in Lincoln and White Pine counties. Ground patrol was done with their support to maximize contact with shed collectors. We had an educational component with advanced radio spots, OGT, trailer deployment, informational flyers, and giveaways. What our goal was to limit resource damage. Obviously, we don't want to impact the critters. We want to document and minimize negative impacts to wintering big game, intentional harassment. Was there intentional harassment going on? Increase public awareness to habitat damage through irresponsible use of ATVs. And our other goal was to increase public awareness of stress on wintering big game due to human activity. We had our OGT trailer out there. We did little keychains, just promotional things we gave away. And then we did a little flyer, and we did a radio spot. And this is going to be really hard to hear. We kind of experimented with it, so I'm not sure we'll be able to hear it, but we'll give it a try. Okay, the results we had, we contacted 247 individuals out there collecting. We surveyed all of them, most all of them, and the project cost about $28,000. What we found was, how much time are individuals spending shed hunting. 36%, about a third of them, 1 to 10 days. We had 11 to 20 days, 39%, 21 to 30 days, 7%, and the 30 plus days, 18%. The 30 plus days in general represents those doing it for commercial purposes. Not all of them, but that's the vast majority. We contacted individuals coming up or down from Montana, spending a month at the Copper Queen Motel in Ely. They had a 30-plus foot Wells Cargo trailer, ATVs, and they'd load that up with sheds and then head out. Purposes, family recreation was 68%, personal use was 20%, and then commercial use was 11%. The residency of the shed hunters, 37% were in county, 38% out of county, and 25% out of state. Okay, just an example of a shed hunter on an ATV just gridding the hillside. And another example of ATV tracks where shed hunters have just gone cross country. Okay, the current status in Nevada, we have NRS 503010. It's unlawful to use aircraft, helicopter, motor-driven vehicle, or boat to chase, hunt wildlife. So it is unlawful to molest, rally, stir, or drive any game mammals or game birds with an aircraft, helicopter, or motor-driven vehicle, including a motorboat or sailboat. So we do have that. If they're chasing them on an ATV, they can be cited for that. We also, as a result of this project we did and public concern, sportsman concern, 2011 legislature enacted a statute, NRS 503.655. The commission shall adopt regulations for the taking of shed antlers. As used in this section, shed antler means antlers which have been naturally shed by any big game mammal in this state. The reason we had to do that is shed antlers are not considered wildlife, and the commission had no authority to regulate shed antlers at the time. So now the commission does have that authority. As far as regulation, some possible components of a regulation, we could look at season dates. We could look at educational requirements. Have an online course. Utah's got one. We could have a limit. You can only collect, 5 sheds per year or what have you. You could have commercial versus recreational, split them up. We could have open and closed units. We looked at these, and the open and closed units, after talking amongst ourselves, biologists and law enforcement together, we felt that if we just have some units closed, it's just going to push the activity into the open units and put more pressure there. Having a limit, that'd be a bit problematic to enforce. The educational requirement, in talking with the chief over in Utah of enforcement, they do that. They have an online course. It's simple, and their opinion is it's a good touchy-feely thing, but it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Those that are going to go out and violate are going to go out and violate, and the only way to address that is having enforcement out there. Season dates is probably the most feasible one, where we just have a season and say, May 1st or April 1st or what have you, to December. So those are some of the options out there. Examples of potential regulatory language. It's unlawful for any person to collect or possess in the field or remove or transport from the field any shed antler except between April 1st and December 31st of each calendar year. So this is just to get people thinking of potential language. A person completing a department shed antler education course and issued a certificate of completion may collect and possess in the field shed antlers year-round. So if they take this course, they could do it year-round. Or maybe they take the course just to collect sheds, end of story, and there's still a season that applies. Each person collecting shed antlers from January 1 through March 31st of each calendar year must possess and exhibit the issued shed antler education certificate upon demand of any officer authorized to enforce fish and game laws of this state. A person who collects and possesses naturally shed antlers for commercial purposes must procure a commercial shed antler permit. I don't believe we have the authority currently to require a fee for a commercial permit. I don't find any statutory authority to do that. Most fees are set in statute, or the commission is authorized to establish a fee for that. So if that's something we want to pursue, that's more of a long-term issue. Shed antlers lawfully collected and possessed may only be sold, traded, or bartered under the authority of a commercial shed antler permit. So we could do a commercial shed antler permit, I think, if there's no fee, just so we keep track of who's out there commercially collecting. And that would be of great assistance. What's going on in the western states? We kind of just took some random samples. Oregon, Washington, and Idaho have no restrictions, license requirements, or education. Utah, shed collectors are required to take shed antler gathering class yearly, only if collecting sheds February to April. So if they want to collect, quote, close season, then they need the permit. Montana, no license or education, but they do have an educational brochure. All wildlife managements are closed January 1st to May 15th because of the wintering grounds. After May 15th, wildlife management areas are open with no restrictions. In Montana, talking to their chief, most of their shed collecting occurs on these management areas. They're not analogous to our management areas. They're huge areas and geared towards big game. All Forest Service areas are open year-round in Montana. Colorado, no license or education requirement. Restrictions on wintering range within the Gunnison Basin, closed January 1st to May 15th. The time restrictions, March 15th to May 15th, are 10 a.m. to sunset. So they're giving the animals a break in the morning to go out and feed. May 16th through December 31st, no restrictions. Nebraska, no license or educational requirement. They have a regulation stating shed antlers can be collected, bought, bartered, or sold. California, you can collect them but not sell them. Arizona, you can only sell bleached antlers. Wyoming, no license or education requirement. Restrictions on the west side of the Continental Divide, closed January 1 to April 30th. April 30th to December 31st, open with no restrictions. East of the Continental Divide, no restrictions and open year-round. So that gives you kind of a overview of what's going on around the West, and be glad to answer any questions.
I have one for you, Rob. The ones coming from out of state, did you watch when they were coming from out of state? They were here from out of state while their home state was closed, and then when their season opened, you didn't see them anymore. They went back.
Correct. That was a real common occurrence with Utah residents coming over here. We did just some, real simple undercover work, basically at the restaurants and bars, and getting together with some of these guys who had been contacted in the field by uniformed officers, and what they told the uniformed officers versus what they told a few of us that were just sitting down chatting with them at the bar were totally different. They underestimated or underreported to the uniformed officers how much time they were spending here, and what they were really doing here was just recreational collecting. To us, they were reporting that, no, I've been here a month at the Copper Queen, and I make this circuit from Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, and back up, and they're pretty sophisticated. They got ATVs. They mark these spots. They guard. They know where these big animals are. They're looking for that match set as well, and if they can find that match set, so they've got contacts in the various communities. They have finder's fees for these match sets and all that. So it's big business. I mean, they're just running a business is what they're doing.
And the other thing that on the previous pie chart, it showed that the vast majority that you contacted in the field was the family outing type people.
Correct.
And when we've talked about this in the past, a lot of those people approached us and said, you know, you don't put any restriction on us. That gets my family and I in the field during an off season, and it's a enjoyable recreation. And that was years ago. Those same people that were telling us not to do anything at that point are the ones coming to me now saying it's out of control at this point and something needs to happen because it's gone beyond recreation. It's all out, game on, let's go get it. So, I mean, there's been a change in Ely and Lincoln County in the past 6-7 years over what it was.
Correct. The challenge here, and it's not insurmountable, is to allow, you know, somebody to go out with their kids and collect a few sheds. And, you know, that to me, that's a positive wildlife experience and so forth. And we want to do what we can to promote that type of activity and get kids interested in wildlife, even if shed hunting is, you know, kind of the first experience with wildlife. So we want to balance it too. We don't want to go overboard and, you know, absolutely no shed hunting anywhere in the state anytime.
Commissioner Macbeth.
So what are we thinking about on the timing of a draft regulation to come before the commission?
We can bring a draft regulation forward. Again, what we did, and this isn't the only one, we have a myriad of regulations that we submitted to LCB. Just in the event that the commission wanted to move forward, the public wanted to move forward and look at some of these issues. And what we tried to do is, on these regulations, we tried to make them more comprehensive than less comprehensive, because the general rule is on a permanent regulation, if the commission makes changes that are narrow the scope of the regulation as opposed to expanding the scope of the regulation, it's more likely to fly through the LCB process. So we could bring this one forward in September, December. I think September agenda might be fairly filled up, but December, we could do that.
Are you saying that you did get something in?
Yes, we did.
Oh, outstanding. Okay. Yeah, I'd say, well, that's up to the chairman, obviously, to make that decision. But sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Chairman, as far as the fee goes, that would take legislative action, we believe.
Right.
So it couldn't be at this point. We've already submitted our BDRs to the governor, and we haven't heard back what he's going to approve. We think we know. But that would have to come from another legislator through support from whatever. The commission could do it, sportsmen's groups could do it, or whatever.
Commissioner Rain.
Thank you. Anything that comes before this commission, I hope that it would never state that it would never limit a limited number of non-commercially collected antlers at any time of the year. I'd have a real problem with any season as long we're talking limited number. We could put a number out there. If we do come up with a season, for example, we're going to create many people that will violate it and have no clue they're violating it because they don't get a hunting license, they might not. So anything we come up with, we should at least have some form of an exemption for up to so many antlers. I would think that a focus on commercial aspects would resolve the issue. Is that, I mean, focusing on commercial, isn't that what that's the most of the problem? Would that be adequate to state that?
I'd say that statement would be right on like 5 years ago. But currently, and that statement is still accurate, but now with just like Commissioner Robb stated, even the folks that aren't doing it commercially, there is a lot of competition out there to get to those biggest antlers first. And they're kind of getting a little carried away and doing what it takes to get to those biggest antlers first in many cases.
And are you seeing them sell those antlers then, or just keep them at home?
Some are selling them. They're going after that match set just to sell. And if they could find one match set, you know, that might be $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 in their pocket. So to me, from our perspective, a law enforcement perspective, no matter what we do, we're going to have to do education first. You just don't pass a regulation and go out and start writing tickets. Yeah, I mean, we won't do that. That's not the right way to go about it. You pass the regulation. Once that's passed, we're going to spend the first 2 years, more than likely, at least the first year, on warning people and so forth. That doesn't mean people aren't going to get tickets if they're warned and we see them back out there, you know, 3 days later and they're thumbing their nose up at us. Yeah, they're going to get a ticket. But education comes first. And then the actual, you know, ticket writing, arrest, whatever it takes to address the situation. But that, in our mind, education is an enforcement component. It's part of an enforcement program.
Commissioner Drew.
Continue on the portion of the regulation about that, I believe, which you had up here about buy, selling, trading, and then you require to have a commercial permit. I mean, that would be my separation from commercial versus non-commercial, is if you're buying, selling, trading, bartering, or whatever your language was. You know, I might be collecting for my house, but when I start doing that, I just changed my rules. So I'm thinking that would be the most significant. But then just a general statement: we got to stay away from regulating anybody just out there that's not selling stuff. And maybe we could have a limit of the number of them they could have as a yearly thing or something. But you know, we get people out there, they're never going to know these regulations, no matter how much education, because you're never going to know those people. And whether we say they can have 6 antlers or 12 antlers or 200, whatever number, we got to come up with something and leave those people alone. Above that, they're not the problem. We need to focus on the problem and not those innocent bystanders who might get thrown into this. I did like the buy, sell, trade, barter section. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Raines on part of it. I think my approach to it would be a little different. And just looking at the Lincoln County Advisory Board letter that came out, I think one of their big concerns, and it's in the second paragraph, or second sentence of the paragraph where they talk about shed hunting, but they say techniques for collecting sheds, at least in Lincoln County, includes walking, riding ATVs across the landscape, chasing animals on ATVs, watching animals for weeks, placing wires across trails, chasing with paraplanes or even helicopters. So in my mind, and maybe from an enforcement standpoint, I think the means by which people collect these might be one of the things we really want to take a hard look at, because I don't know anyone who's going to take their kid out for a weekend day to pick up a few horns who's going to go out and rent a helicopter to do that. So to me, that's the bigger issue I have concern with is some of what's going on there in relation to wildlife ecology and health, and even landscape health for that matter.
Yeah, if we address the means of take and also commercial versus non-commercial, and just, you know, commercial permits required if you're going to sell them, end of story. Otherwise, you know, enjoy yourself within these season dates.
Just a question for you, Rob. Is your opinion on four-wheelers and that, where do you stand on that? What do you personally think you should draw the line? Because I agree with Commissioner Drew as far as the Commissioner Raines, as far as the commercial separation be the thing with me. And the means is really important. I think it's great people go out there if they're walking and doing this and hiking and taking their family out, but absolutely no aircraft. But I'm not so sure I even want four-wheelers out there doing it. So all they're doing is tearing up the land.
I see no problem from a law enforcement or a biological habitat perspective with regards to four-wheelers, as long as they're sticking to designated roads.
That's the key.
Yeah, on established roadways, that's fine.
Yeah, me too.
But the cross-country stuff, no.
And is that how your potential regulation is crafted?
Yeah, it's been a while since we drafted it. I'd have to look at it real close, but there's I think we have all the components in there except maybe the means isn't addressed real clearly in there. But it's a start.
Yeah, I had the opportunity a couple winters ago to spend from mid-January through June over in Ely, and it was a big eye-opener to me to see the amount of antlers coming in and pickup trucks and ATV. The four-wheeler's not the method of choice over there. They all went and found those old fat tracks. They're much more maneuverable up and down washes and stuff than your quad is, so the fat tracks is the weapon of choice over there now.
Is that a tote goat, Jack?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was an eye-opener to see everything going on over there. That's all they talk about, and a good portion of the big match set hunting doesn't happen when they're on the ground. It happens when that animal's still packing around, and they have people just sit on those animals for weeks on end, waiting for that animal to drop because they want to be the one to get them, and they all try to not show each other where they're watching the animals from, because then if you see the same guy in the same spot 3 days in a row, then you got 3 trucks sitting in the same spot 3 days in a row. It's pretty competitive.
There's a lot of people with a lot of spare time, that's for sure.
The other interesting thing we found out with this was when we conducted these patrols, and it's a good educational tool, is the internet. The word spread like wildfire. Nevada game wardens are out patrolling for sheds. We've never seen them out there before. They're talking about regulations. Collect them now while you can, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was buzzing through on all the internet sites.
Yeah, I don't think it's anybody's intent to take away a family activity. We just need to keep the family activity out there and protect the animals at the same time. That's where we need to get. Commissioner Raines?
And how many of the activities that Lincoln County puts forward are already illegal? I mean, I look at, and it looks like there's a large section of them. I mean, they all involve many of them involve harassing of game, and that's already law, so we don't basically need, we don't need to reinvent the harassment of game laws. They already exist. When we're talking about the wires across the trails, placing of wires across trails, bucks or bulls use in an attempt to dislodge the animals, chasing them with paraplanes, helicopters. I mean, it seems to me that the majority of the most damaging things are already illegal. So, okay, we're done with that. You're not talking about adding more to those? Or are you?
No, there's kind of two phases here. The first phase being if they're actively doing that with live animals, then yes, that statute applies. If they're not, if they're out there using power paraplane, helicopter, ATVs, what have you, searching for sheds and not chasing, harassing the animals, and directly doing that, because it's tough for us to prove that, well, the ATV drove by and the elk on the side of the hill moved up 300 yards because of it. We never win that in court anyway. So we got to look at it from the perspective, how are they collecting these? Yes, we do have a law in the book that addresses the harassment of wildlife, and I'm comfortable with that the way it is now.
Okay.
But the issue then becomes, how are they collecting the sheds? You know, are they flying with the helicopter at low altitude and looking for the sheds and marking them on a GPS and then coming back later?
So I'm just trying to go through the language of regulation that would cover that, and it seems like it would be very similar to the harassment language, right?
Would be specific to sheds, because
Specific
remember
to
the
sheds.
reason.
Same words, just saying sheds.
Right.
More or less.
Yeah, because remember the reason we needed the legislation to grant the commission the authority to address sheds is because sheds are not considered wildlife. So we can't even apply that statute to sheds because they're not wildlife.
So now you could basically take that regulation that exists and add sheds in there, and it might cover it.
It may, yeah, we'd have to look at it.
Anybody have anything else?
I do like the terminology you came up with, huntlers.
Huntlers?
It's interesting. It's going to catch on.
Cool.
You have anything else, Rob?
No, that's it.
Okay, that's the end of item B. Before we move on, we've been at it for a couple hours. Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll be back 3:10, get going again.